This conversation should not just stay in the Bible school. This conversation need to have a critical liberal scholar would discuss this and then leave it at that. But unfortunately, this discourse have not been, most Christians are not conversant with this discussion that is around the identity of Yahweh. And I think what this program has helped us to do is to, severally in the Bible, God talk about what singing to him a new song, because I think sometimes God get tired with old things. So giving him that model, grandpa model, which some people have about God, it becomes very even difficult to connect with the young generation who think that they need a technological driven deity. My name is Dr. Matthew Michael from Nasarawa State University. For this past 4 days, we have been talking about who is Yahweh. There have been a lot of debate on the identity of Yahweh in the Old Testament. Most Christians believe that Yahweh is actually a unique, distinctive God, different from the person of God in the New Testament. Other believes that, actually the most critical one, believe that Yahweh is actually a local divinity or deity that actually evolved from the mythological Canaanite pantheon, and later became Yahweh, the universal deity that we find in the Judeo-Christian tradition. This debate has been on, but in the past 4 days we have tried to look the evolution of Yahweh, how Yahweh became the God of Israel. We have looked at different theories and perspective to that, and we have also tried to see how this is resolved for us evangelical Christians, why Yahweh is a universal deity who, through prophetic revelation, is seen as a God, not just for Israel, but the God of the universe. And from that perspective, we could see that Yahweh is not a local God as argued by liberal critical scholarship, but is a defined being who asserts his authority through prophetic revelation in the Old Testament and New Testament, that he is the God of the world. Not just the God of the world, but the God of the universe. We have also established the fact that what Yahweh is transcendent, where we saw that what Yahweh is not just a deity that is localized in one geography, like the debates that the critical liberal debate have placed in, that Yahweh is not just the sibling relations with Baal or any of those Canaanite deity, but he is actually an important figure who Moses, the prophet, have encountered with, and who revealed himself through them and assert his universal dominion over the world. And we have looked at what this means practically. What does sovereignty of Yahweh, what is the transcendent nature of Yahweh means for Judeo-Christian faith? We have also looked at it practically too. How does this claim of Yahweh as a universal God, how is it reflected in Old Testament, New Testament? And what will that knowledge translate for us as Christian students of the Bible and people at the grassroots? Because sometimes when we talk about the sovereignty of Yahweh, we just leave it at there. We have not really practically begin to see how the sovereignty of Yahweh affect daily life of Christians. For example, the practical understanding of the theology of sovereignty implies that we could trust a God that is not capricious, a God that doesn't just is unpredictable, but a God that is dependable. So we're able to see that this God is dependable. This God, in comparison to the deities in Canaanite religion, we see that this God is consistent. He's a covenant-keeping God. He made a covenant with Abraham. He made a covenant with Moses. He made a covenant with David, and he kept those covenant with these persons. And finally, we see the fulfillment of this covenant in the New Testament in the person of Jesus Christ. So in that sense, Yahweh is not just sovereign, but has personal relationship with Israel as the first people he had covenant relationship with, and later on also we find it in the person of Jesus Christ, and later on in the indwelling presence in the life of all believers who put faith in Jesus Christ. So in that sense, we see a God who is not just like like Baal or Anat or Yam or El of the Canaanite religion, but is a God who is universal and who has personal interest in the life of his people. We also see that when we believe that Yahweh is sovereign, it also have a practical implication in how we pray. You understand? Mostly African Christians are afraid of witches or wizards. They're afraid of demons. But if you believe that God is sovereign and that he has authority over every being, that every being or everything, whether spiritual, physical, are under his control, we don't need to begin to worry how are things around our life, or the fear of witches, the fear of wizards, the fear of people who harm me, my village people, that has been dominant in most part of Africa, will not be. It's not that we don't believe that this thing exists, but it's that we don't live perpetually in their fear, because there is a God that is sovereign. But if we live in these different versions of deity, and we assume that it's Yahweh, most of the times we find it difficult to actually believe that Yahweh could take care of us. And then prayer now become praying out of fear, not out of the confidence what we find in the New Testament. So again, practically we can translate the divine sovereignty of Yahweh in confidence that we have in prayers. And then if we believe that Yahweh is actually sovereign, it could also help us in our obedience towards him. If we know that there is a being that is dominant, that is overall, that is not just in control of this world, but in control of the universe, a willingness to obey him and to trust him will come very easily. But if we believe that this being is just very narrow, it's a being that is very localized, and with some of those localized versions of the deity in our head, it is difficult actually to obey that kind of deity, because we may think that there are some things he doesn't know. He's not omniscient, he's not omnipresent, he can understand our struggle, or even understand or see us the way we are. So these are some of the fundamental things we learn through this interaction. And we have also learned how this conversation should not just stay in the Bible school. This conversation need to have more in the life of the Christians, because sometimes critical liberal scholar would discuss this and then leave it at that. But unfortunately, this discourse have not been, most Christians are not conversant with this discussion that is around the identity of Yahweh. And I think what this program has helped us to do is to pass this knowledge, this critical liberal knowledge that is there on Yahweh, and also how we evangelicals should be able to respond to these critics and theories about the evolution of Yahweh in ancient Israel. I think these are fundamentally what we have done. But again, a lot of questions that came up during this conversation. Most people were worried that when we bring this kind of critical discourse in liberal scholarship, we bring them to the life of ordinary Christian, it may help them not to stay firm in the faith. But I think that is not the case, because if you look at in the New Testament, we see Paul engage in conversation with Athens. In fact, there have been debate right from the time of Tertullian, I think. I said, what has Jerusalem got to do with Athens? I think there's a lot that Jerusalem have to go with, and our faith must be able to relate with reason. There was a conversation that actually critically respond to the liberal discourse around the identity of Yahweh should be something that we should be encouraged to do. Not just in Hebrew home, but also in our Bible studies and our opportunity given to us to teach about Yahweh. We should be able to help people to understand that Yahweh, this is the identity of Yahweh as presented by scholarship, but this is the way he is as presented in the Bible. And I think when we do that, we'll do justice to the Bible, as well as to respond to the larger discussion taking place in the critical scholarship on the identity of Yahweh. I think for me, what very, very important for me in all this discourse is the fact that we're able to establish that there are two type of monotheism. Christians are monotheists in their confession and belief, but there are two type of monotheism. There is the inclusive monotheism, and there is the exclusive monotheism. Exclusive monotheism believe that Yahweh became the God of Israel without any reference to any Canaanite deity or any other being. But inclusive means that it is the appropriation of this Canaanite religion that actually formulate and brought about the construct of monotheism the way we find in ancient Israel. This we dealt with, and we also have responded accordingly to them. But I have to say that most Christians are not familiar with this discourse. And I think what the program has helped us with the questions that came through the program is that most Christians need to do a lot of study on the identity of Yahweh beyond just this conversation that we have already started. I think Hebrew Home is just starting the conversation. We hope that a new, continuous reflections and discourses around Yahweh will help to enrich our understanding of it and also be able to provide us better understanding of what the Bible says about Yahweh, what scholars, liberal critical say about Yahweh, and how do we also converse and communicate this understanding of Yahweh in such a way that will be true to the Bible, as well as also be meaningful and relevant to our people in Africa. And I think when we do that, I think the church will be able to move to greater height, and will be the knowledge will be a blessing to the church. I will also have to say that the people have critiqued even the understanding of monotheism, and we have looked at it even in this entire discourse. People have looked at how monotheism have been an enlightenment concept itself, and applying to Yahweh those monotheism concept is actually a disservice to Yahweh, since in Christianity, in Judeo-Christian understanding, Yahweh Yahweh is singular, that is, he is only one, but yet also he lives in plurality, like the Godhead in three persons. So how does that enlightenment concept of monotheism fit into the discourse of what? Into the discourse of Christian construct of the divine being, as we find in the Old Testament. And not even to talk about the issue of intermediaries. You know, that God in the Christian tradition, the Judeo-Christian tradition, exists at three persons. But the understanding of monotheism in the popular discourse as well as critical liberal discourse is that believing in oneness of God. Christian believe, yes, in the oneness of God, but the God of the Christian as well as the Jew has expressed himself in three persons. And we're able to see in these 4 days of discourse, we're able to see how that understanding render problematically the use of monotheism as a construct to understand the Christian understanding of the divine being as revealed in the Old Testament and the New Testament, because of the singularity of what God has one, and then the plurality of three persons in oneness of God. So these are some of the things we have discussed. There have been a lot of interesting discussion right from the questions and the analysis. Some were of the opinion that this conversation should continue, but with the limited time, this is actually what we could do. But I think maybe in the future we could make it more robust by maybe having it during the weekend, when people, it will not affect the working days of people. Having the weekend, maybe we'll have a lot of people who will be interested in having this conversation. And I wish that this conversation will not just stop here, but will also be in our churches, because who is Yahweh is very important. So that when we understand who Yahweh is and the different discourse and theories around Yahweh, it will help us to have a better and richer and relevant knowledge of Yahweh that could be a blessing to the church in Nigeria and Africa as large. So I think this is an interesting step by the Hebrew Homes, and I actually have to say kudos to Dr. Emmanuel for engineering and his staffs who have actually saw this need of having this conversation. And we also have seen how God, Allah in the Quran and the Hadith, and how Christianity should have Christian as Muslims as conversational partner, rather than these aggressive discourses and mistrust and biases and prejudices that go both on the Christ side of Christians and the Muslim. If we can have that conversation on who is Allah, do we remove the name Allah in the Quran, in the Bible, in the Hausa Bible? All those things were discussed during this conversation. I think it's nice having this kind of conversation in a spirit of understanding the prejudice of Christian, and also try to understand the prejudice of Muslim too, in discourse of what Allah in the Quran and the Hadith. I think this has been a very enriching and a pet setter of discussion. And I think not many not many ministries are really concerned about this kind of discussion. Who is Allah? Who is Yahweh? And how that conversation could enrich and bless ordinary Christians who are struggling with the theological questions or what. How should they relate with a God that is transcendent but is also eminent? How can they relate to the God that is what people say is vindictive and yet what is so what loving and compassionate? How can they deal with all the misconception of deity? And in fact, we talk about the common misconception of Yahweh in respect to most ordinary Christians. Like most people consider Yahweh as a genie in a bottle who is just there to just answer our wishes. This is not the word we see in the Bible about the construct of Yahweh identity. We also talk about some people that also approach Yahweh as a static being who doesn't actually need a wanted change. These are all misconceptions of Yahweh that I think are wrong. We also talk about the grandpa model of Yahweh, that Yahweh is just an old person with a white bearded, seated in heaven, the throne, who is obsolete, outdated, irrelevant, and just like a grandfather who just left there to steal old people's home. God has abdicated his responsibility towards the world and is now an old father figure. We also see the problematic nature of that kind of concept of Yahweh, because in the Bible we met a Yahweh that is actually energetic, that is creative, that said we should sing him a new song. He's tired of the old ones. He wanted us to sing to him a new song that will be enriching and I think severally in the Bible God talk about singing to him a new song, because I think sometimes God get tired with old things. So giving him that model of grandpa model, which some people have about God, it becomes very even difficult to connect with the young generation who think that they need a technological driven deity, a God that is versatile, a God that is not outdated, that has no lost touch of his word. We see that God in Yahweh. We see that God in Jesus Christ, who incarnate now Yahweh in human bodily form. So these are all the things we discuss in this discussion. And I think if we keep this tradition, I hope it will become a tradition whereby we don't just we look at those nitty-gritty of things that even some seminaries are afraid to discuss. Here we had the freedom of discussing them because we are not under any denominational umbrella. We are free to discuss and engage those critical issues in theology. And it has provided us with a deeper, richer understanding of the identity of Yahweh as well as the identity of Allah in the Hadith and the Quran. So I will thank Dr. Emmanuel and his team and the staffs of Hebron Homes for the opportunity to actually share from my thoughts on who is Yahweh and the misconception of Yahweh, the 10 important defining things in Yahweh's identity and the metamorphosis of Yahweh in the New Testament, and what is the practical implication of that for our theology as ordinary men and women and as Christians. It is an opportunity to meet with different persons, and I really appreciate it. I will not be able to call everybody by name, but I appreciate all the work from the media crew, the people that serve the food, and we have a wonderful food. It was nice eating and having, like I said, food bring anointing. So I really appreciate everything. I wish the Hebrew Home a wonderful time in the future programs that will have this conversation, not just limited here, but also it will impart the church and enrich our theological discussion at the grassroots. Wishing you all the best, and hope to see you next time. Thank you.